There's way too much stuff on my screen now. Hold on one second. All right. You guys are back. Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to change it to my desktop. And I'm going to make a brand new project. So I'm going to do npx create React app, and it'll be redux-counter. Okay. So now, in a couple days, we'll have a React Redux app. There might be a like a flag you can put on, because I know you can do like create React app, the app name, and then you can tell it to use npm instead of yarn. So I don't know. There might be like an additional flag that you can put on there to install Redux at the same time. I've never used it, but there could very well be. And I kind of want to get you guys. It's all right. So you'll just be voices. Your faces aren't going to be on the video, if it even works. Okay, so my app is done. There it is. I'm going to CD into it. And I'm going to open it with Visual Studio Code. And put it in view. And I'm going to take my terminal away, open this, and okay, you guys see Visual Studio Code, right? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to just go in and clean out some of this stuff. So I'm going to get rid of this report vitals thing. I'm going to delete all this stuff just so it's out of the way. And I'm going to run npm start to make sure it's working. Npm start. And let me get these on the same screen. And I got an error message before I even started. So let's see what we got. Yeah. So let's go into app.js, and so yeah, that doesn't like that I'm importing a logo that's not there, so let's delete that. And I took out the web vitals, so I gotta take that stuff out. It's in the index, right there. Take that stuff out. There we go. Now is it happy? No, I gotta take. Yeah. So let's go back to app.js, and we'll take all this stuff out and just get back to our counter that we know and love. So h1 counter, and why is it still mad about the logo? There, okay. All right, so now we have a counter. So I want to start from scratch. So I'm leaving this as a functional app, or I'm sorry, a functional component, because we don't need state, right? We're going to have Redux handle our state. So let's go to, so what do I need to do to make this into what do I need to use Redux? Yeah. So I'm going to stop my server, and I'm going to install, so I'm going to npm install what? Okay, so we're going to need the Redux library, and we're going to need React Redux. So I'll install those. And they're pretty quick. Yeah, so they're already installed. Okay, so Okay, so what I'm going to do is just set it up as simply as I possibly can. There's a lot of boilerplate stuff that goes along with Redux, but I'm going to try to make it as easy to understand as I can. So I'm going to make, inside my source folder, I'm going to make a new folder called Redux. And inside of Redux, I'm going to make 3 files. One of them is going to be the store, so store.js. One of them will be the reducer. .js. And one of them will be actions. .js. Okay, so first thing I need is my store, right? Because that's where all of our, that's the store, right? That's where the data is going to be. So to do that, I'm going to need to import create store from, and that just comes from Redux. Okay. So I'm going to come back to this file because the actions, reducer, and the store sort of work hand in hand. So you can't really have one without the other. So I'm going to need to define my reducer as well. Okay, so I'm going to go into reducer.js and write my reducer. So go in here and I'm going to say it's just going to be a just a regular JavaScript function. So I'm just going to call it const reducer equals, and I'm going to make it an arrow function. Okay, and what arguments does the reducer take? Right, so it takes our state, and I'm going to set that as a default object. And just like we had the count before, the count will be default to 0. And what else does the reducer take? Make this smaller so you guys can see. Action, right? So we're going to say action. And then inside the reducer, the body of the reducer, what do we do with, what are we checking? Yeah, we're the switch statement just evaluates the type of the action, right? So we're just going to say switch, and it's going to switch based on action.type. Okay. And then by default, it's just going to return what? Right, it's going to return state. Okay. And I'll put a parentheses in there because this is the class that likes parentheses, right? Or semicolons, right? I think that's, yeah, okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to go back to my store. And where's my store? What did I do? I put this in the wrong place. I'm sorry. I put my store in my actions folder. Sorry. Let me cut that out. Put it in the right file. Okay, sorry. So I put it in actions. I don't know why I did that. I hope that's, so I I made a store file, I just didn't, I put it in the wrong place. So store.js is where my store goes. I hope that's just a boo-boo on my part. Okay, so now I need my reducer in my store, right? So I'm going to import my reducer from the reducer file. So how do I do that? This is just basic JavaScript import out export. Yeah, well, I did it as a default export. No, I didn't. I did it named. I didn't even export it. Let's do that. Export default AULT reducer. There we go. And now in the store, I want to import it with import what? Reducer from, and it's in the same folder, so all I have to do is just say /reducer, right? All right, so now we're going to create our store. And this is kind of where just the sort of Redux magic just sort of takes over. So we're going to use this create store function, and it's behind the scenes Redux. The Redux library is going to do the magic of managing our store. Okay, so this is like we're getting back to the black box thing. So I'm just going to define a variable called store. So const, spell const right, const store equals, and I'm just going to invoke the create store function. And create store takes a reducer as an argument, a single reducer. Okay, that'll be important later, but so I'm just going to pass it my reducer. Okay. Might want this stuff go away. There we go. Okay, so my store is set up. I'm going to not forget to export it this time. So export default store. Okay. You guys with me? Am I going too fast? No? Okay. Okay. So now we have our reducer set up. Our state is set up as our count is 0. We're exporting the reducer. We're importing it in our store. Now we need to, we'll do actions a little bit later, but now we need to connect our app component with we need to connect our app component to Redux. Okay, so there's a couple of steps involved in that. So what do we need to do? Exactly. Yes. Perfect. So in the index.js, we need to, whatever component is going to use Redux, right? Whatever component's going to subscribe, we need to have our entire application wrapped, just like with the React router, right? Whatever is going to use Redux has to be wrapped within it. Okay, so we import, and it's named, right? Provider, is it capital? Yeah. Provider from, and that's React Redux, right? I believe it is. React Redux. Yeah. Okay, so we've got our provider. We need to wrap it in, we need to wrap our app in the provider. So I'm going to change this to just from the React strict mode, I'm just going to change that to provider. Okay. Is that all I have to do? Yes. Let me run, let's get this started again. PM start. Yes. So we're getting a big error. So I forgot to run my server, so I apologize. This didn't go as well as I thought. So it's saying get state, and you'll notice that if you look at my error message, it's not even coming from a file that I wrote. You see that the error is in provider.js. I didn't write provider.js, right? So it's basically telling us where we screwed up. It's saying cannot get state of undefined. So it's trying to get my state, but I need to pass my store into the provider so that my app has access to it, right? So how do I do that? Excuse me. Right. So I've got to import my store, and I can't remember if I did I did default, okay. So I'm going to import store from, and I got to say, look in this file, look in Redux, right? And look in store. Okay. So now I can just use my store and my provider. So my store is going to be equal to my store. Everybody cool? Yeah? Awesome. So let me refresh this, see if my error goes away, and it does. Okay. So now I've got my provider. Now what do I need to do to connect my app to Redux? Okay, so this is where so this is where, remember we had that crazy looking connect function. So import connect from React Redux. Okay, so this is the method or the function that actually, it's called a subscriber model, but it basically, anything we use this connect function with, it will connect that app to our Redux store. Okay, so you guys remember this from last time? It's connect, and it takes those kind of weird two curly brace thing or two parentheses things, and then we wrap our app as the second argument, right? Okay, so I'm going to pass in props here, and I'm going to put a console log in here to see what props are. Okay, so I'm going to open up my console, refresh, and look at that. See my props? So just by virtue of connecting my just by virtue of connecting my app component to Redux, I have something on props that I didn't define. I have this dispatch function. Okay. So what I need though is I need to get the data that's in my store, right? I need to get this inside of my app, because I remember our counter, we have our little counter here and we have buttons that make it go up and down, right? And reset it. So I want to get here, and I'm just going to hard code it so we can see what our goal is. I want this 0 to be the 0 that's in my store. Okay, so how do I access the 0 that's in my store? The count that's in my store. Remember we did something called map state to props, map dispatch to props. So map state to props is just what it sounds like, right? It maps our state to our props, right? And that's not just a clever name. So to get access to our state, we invoke the map state to props, or create the map state to props function. So I'm just going to define a function called map state to props. You don't have to call it map state to props, but I would strongly recommend it. Okay, so map state to props takes state as an argument, and we return an object, and we're going to define our variable here. So I'm just going to call it count, which is what it is. And then to get the count, we say state.count. Okay, so the state, going back to our reducer, our state is equal to this object, right? So we're pulling the count variable out of the state. Okay, so we're mapping map state to props allows us to get the state from our store. Okay, so yes. So at this point, if I save the file and refresh, okay, so I'm missing a step. So what do I need to do with map state to props to get it to connect it to my app? So I need to pass it as an argument to the first set of parentheses. So map state to props. Now if I save it, now look at my props. So let me clear this so you guys can see it. Let me refresh. So now in my props, I have a count property and I have a dispatch. Okay. Question so far? Okay. So, how do I change this hard-coded 0 to what's in my store? How do I access that from my props? Yeah. Yeah, it's the same. So we don't need to say this because it's a regular function. It's an arrow function. It's not a class-based component, but just props dot count. Okay. And so just to make sure that it's working, I'm going to change count to 10. Refresh, and we're got 10. Okay. So now I'm accessing the count variable that's in my reducer. Okay. You guys following me? Yeah, okay. All right, so let me close up this stuff. So we're not going to need our store anymore. It's just going to sort of operate behind the scenes at this point. So we're going to need app.js in our reducer. Okay, so let's start making buttons. So I got my props.count. I'm going to make a button. I'm going to put a break in here just so. And then I'm going to say button. And we'll call it up. Where's my button? There it is. So now I want to get my button to make my count go up. Okay, so this is where I think in the curriculum they gloss over dispatch, right? And they just use map dispatch to props. But at this point, we have access to dispatch in our props right here, right? So we can just dispatch, all dispatch is going to do is take our action and send it into our reducer. So it just sort of, it does what the action creators that we made in the campsite code along, it does it just on the fly. Okay, so I'm going to do this. So I'm going to say on click equals, and this has to be a function, right? So whatever function I put in here is going to invoke when I click, right? So if I console.log, it worked. Now when I click the button, I get it worked in the console. Okay, but what I'm going to want to do is actually dispatch my action. Okay, so I'm going to say props.dispatch, and an action is, what is an action? Yep, just a plain old JavaScript object, right? So a action has to have a type. Okay, that's required, right? So a type, and I'm going to say the type is inc for increment. Okay. You guys with me? So when I click this button, did I hear no? Or yeah? Yeah, okay, I thought I heard no. Okay, so when I click this, props.dispatch is going to send this action into my reducers if I didn't screw anything up. So let's go see if it worked. So I've got my switch statement set up to respond to the action.type, right? So let me try this. So log action. So now if I refresh, okay, that's weird. But that tells me that it's working. This is sort of like see it how it says redux. Yeah, so it's working. But let's do this a way that's a little less confusing. So our switch statement switches based on the action type, right? So what do we do in a switch statement to do alternate things based on the type we're switching on. What's the keyword we use? Case. Right, so in the case that it's INC, we do something, right? So I'm just going to console.log. I'm sorry? I heard something. No? Okay. Well, case. Space? Case? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Alright. So I'm going to say console.log, you made it to the reducer. Okay, so now when I refresh this and click this, I get you made it to the reducer. Okay, so that's just my smoke test to make sure that my case is working. Okay, so I sent this type or this action with a type of ink to my reducer. Now, what do I want to do in the case that the user clicks this button? Yeah, make it go up, right? So what I want to do is return. What do I return? Yeah, exactly. So it can't return, we can't mutate state, right? That's the big thing about Redux, is we don't change our state. So we want to make a new copy of the state. So we use the spread operator and state. So that basically says make a new copy of the state, but change the count to whatever the current count is, state.count plus 1. Okay? So now, fingers crossed, hoping I didn't mess anything up. If I click the up, let me just refresh because it worked. I'm always a little relieved when it works. Okay, so I click the up button and it goes up. Success. So how do I make it go down? I need another button, right? So that's step 1. Start with the easy stuff. So I'm just going to duplicate this button. I'm going to change up to down. Okay. So now I got a down button. But when I click down, what's going to happen? It's going to go up, right? Because I've got my type set to ink. So I want to change the type that goes into my reducer so the case statement will do the appropriate thing, right? So I'm going to change this from ink to deck. Okay, so now when I click this, what's going to happen? When I click the button. Why? Right. Well, what's happening in the reducer? Yeah, no, it's not going to go to 0. So it's going to go through the switch statements. It's going to see this type deck, right? It's going to see this type quotations DEC, and it's not going to find a case statement, right? So it's going to fall through to the default. So whatever the state is now, it's just going to, I'm clicking it and nothing's happening. It's just going to return the current state. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So what do I do in the reducer to get it to go up? Or, I'm sorry, to go down. Yeah. So tell me what to type. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, because programmers are lazy and laziness is a virtue, I'm just going to duplicate this. Okay, so I'm going to say case, where did my cursor go? There it is. Make it look pretty. So in the case that the type is deck, type is DEC, then I'm going to want it to go down, right? So I'm just going to change this from a plus to a minus. Now, fingers crossed. Let me refresh. Up goes up. Down goes down. Okay. All right. So how do I reset? Another button. Yep. So another button. I'm going to say type is reset. And change the button to reset. Okay, so now when I send in the type, when I click reset, what's going to happen? Right, so if I go down, if I go up, if I click reset, it's just going to return the whatever the state is, because there's no case statement, so it's just falling through to default. Okay, so I need to make, what do I need to do? Make another case, right? Make another case, so I'm going to copy, paste, duplicate, change deck to reset. And what do I want my state to be now? So I want to return a copy of the state, right? And I want to, what do I want my count to be? Right. So instead of taking the current state, I just want it to set it to 0. And now, fingers crossed, if I go up, oops, go down, reset. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so go down. There we go. All right. So here's the difference. If we use action creators instead of just setting this up in line, we need to do what? Like if I want, instead of just using the dispatch from my props, I want to make a separate map dispatch to props. I want to actually use my I want to use map dispatch to props instead of doing it in line. So how do I do that? Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. So what I'm going to do... Yeah, so I mean, this is... But this doesn't scale, right? Because if you want to have different things happen, it's sort of messy, right? To actually call dispatch. I mean, something simple like this is the solution, right? This makes sense. But to sort of explain map dispatch to props in this context, I'm going to go that one step further. So we'll just do one. We'll just do the up button because I know it's getting kind of late. So I'm going to delete the other buttons because they're not going to work. So I'm just comment them out. And we'll just get the up to work. Okay, so up. So I'm going to make an action in my action file. And it's just going to be an action. So there's action creators and actions, right? So an action creator is just a function that returns an action. Okay, so I'm just going to say const. I'm just going to make the name. So export const inc equals an arrow function. And all it's going to return is an object or an action, right? It's going to return an action of type inc. Okay? So now to gain access to this in my app component, I need to set up my map dispatch to props. So map state to props is the state. Map dispatch to props is how we get our actions. So I'm going to say const map dispatch to props. And map dispatch to props is an object. And all this does is links our actions to our props, basically. So if I say, if I can name this whatever I want, I could say make count go up. And set that to ink. Right, but what do I need to do to be able to use my ink action? Right. So I'm going to import ink from, where am I? From / redux - actions. And let me, so what's the next thing I need to do to get my map dispatch to props connected? Right, yeah, so I pass it as a second argument to the first parentheses in my my connect. So it's map dispatch to props. So now you'll see that my props have changed. So if I refresh this, now my count is back to 0, but I have this prop called make count go up. Okay, so instead of dispatching directly, I can say props dot make count go up, and I have to invoke it because it's inside of a function. Now, drum roll. It goes up, it works. Okay, so questions. So all I've done is mapped. I've called it make count go up just to show that it could be anything, but I could call it ink. Right? Now I have an ink function. Right. So in order to tell React Redux what I want, I need to have 2 arguments coming into this connect function. They don't have to be called this, but again, you want to follow conventions. Yeah. So map state to props connects our data. Map dispatch to props connects any functionality, right? Whatever we want our app to do. So I'm going to have to change this to ink. And now it should work. There we go. One of the advantages of having them be the same name is in ES6, when the key and the value are the same, you only have to put it one time. So we can just say ink, and it'll still work. There's a lot going on. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, sorry, somebody just slapped me. Hold on. Oh, Enrique. Are you back, Enrique? There you are. Okay. Okay. No worries, no worries. Okay, so yeah, any questions? Yes, I'm going to put it on YouTube, and I'll if you weren't following along, I'll put it on GitHub just so you guys have access to it. I'll just call it whatever I called it. Yeah. But yeah, I'll put it on YouTube if my video worked. So I don't know. This is the first time I've tried it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So on simple little things like this, sometimes they'll just do, like, you don't have to have the second argument can be just what you want to dispatch, right? You can put your dispatch right in here if it's real simple. But you can just, if you just leave this blank, you then can do what I did with just, you can have access to dispatch directly. In a simple app like this, it's probably using map dispatch to props as overkill, just because it was so simple to do it the other way. Then it would be ridiculous to. And that's the advantage. And also, all of your actions are in one file, so you can look at one file and see everything that it does. The other thing they do is the action types. They set these to variables. And that is just to also so you can have a shorter version of your actions, right? You can all, like, that's just like however many actions you have is a line of code. So you can look, if you have 200 actions, you can look at 200 lines of code instead of the 2,000 lines of code that end up being your actions, right? So, and also when you have these set up as a variable, it auto completes it for you. So if I were to say up here, const inc equals inc, right? Then I can just say, if I just start typing the type of inc, it'll autocomplete for me, right? So, but if I don't have this, and I'm actually typing out by hand the string that it's supposed to be, and I say inc, right? It's not going to give me any kind of warning, and I'm going to spend 20 minutes trying to figure out why my button's not going up, right? Whereas if I have it set to a variable, then I get the auto completion, and always use autocomplete. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it is a lot, right? We have 3 files, and we have we we have a, like, how many method calls, this huge library to make a counter go up, right? To make a number go up on a page, which is way too much, right? We did this using just plain React, and it's 2 lines of code, right? Instead of however many Redux library is. So, but yeah. All right. Cool. Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll be here tomorrow night if you guys need me. Also, just Slack me during the day, and yeah, study hard because this. And I told you guys about the project, right? Don't worry about project. Okay, cool. All right. You're welcome. Have a good night. Bye bye.